I'm joined today by Assemblyman Gerry Scharfenberger. Thanks for being with me today.
Thank you for having
Assemblyman.
me.
Yeah, it's great. So we're doing all things budget and looking ahead both today and obviously the whole season that you're entering into, which I know you were very involved in last year, and I expect you would be again this year.
Gearing up to right now as we speak, and we're bracing ourselves a little bit on what we're looking at, but hopefully we're going to do our part to make it as painless as possible for the constituents.
Yes. Well, leading into the budget, we tried to help actually translate what you all do down here in Trenton to what it means to them. And in the report, we speak to there's been a substantial increase in spending, which has meant we've had some federal funds coming in, but now not as many federal funds are coming in, so taxation will have to come into play or reduce spending. And so what we tried to lay out for constituents is, there's only three large sources really of income for the state government. Income taxes, right? And so to fill the gap, it looks like it'll go down to probably $100,000 and above in terms of families that'll have to pay more taxes. Or other people have talked about sales tax. And our analysis said that it has to go up not to 7%, as some people are saying, but more to 9% in order to close the gap, which is can be substantial. Like we estimate on a car, right, of $35,000, it's another $1,000 on top of everything else. And then, of course, corporate tax is one everyone likes to talk about because it feels like it's other people's money, and therefore we can, raise the taxes back again as it, has come down. I know you were involved in that. So we were, of course, looking at, some restraint in spending. But, you really see the inside, Assemblyman. So what are your thoughts about both what you're going to hear as well as what you'd like to see out of the budget?
Well, naturally, what we would like to see would be a reining in of the spending. As your report rightfully said, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. And that's clear when the budget has gone up as much as it has, nearly $20 billion since the governor... $20 billion since the governor took office. So that's the first key, is to rein in the spending the way we have been. The revenues will never keep up with such breakneck spending like that. So that's what we would like to see happen. What I think we're going to see is the governor likes to be able to say what he did and gave to people, but all of that comes with a cost. And that sort of mentality, that sort of emotion that guides budgets rather than sound fiscal policy is what we're facing here. And I think we're going to see a budget that's been developed and created to feed into that emotion of what we're giving you, and there's probably nothing on the table that they don't want to expand as far as existing programs and add things that they think are a good idea that will play well to the folks out there.
Well, and to your point, I know, as I said before, you were very involved in this, and looking at it from a fiscal perspective, this idea of being able to promise more is a bit belied, right, by our current revenue results. What we see is actually, in spite of all of the tax policy that has been in place, that revenues are actually declining, and they will be lower. I believe we're going to hear, right? We're going to see that revenues will be lower in this fiscal year than they were last year. So what is it that you think is underneath the logic of being able to say that I can still increase more taxes and expect to get more revenue, or do you think they're really going to be using more surplus?
I think they're going to have to use more surplus. It's going to be all hands on deck. Wherever they can get some source of revenue, they will utilize it. We still have some CARES Act money that's floating around out there. We haven't been able to get a clear number on how much is left, where it is, and what's being held. And that's got us a little bit nervous because we don't know what we're dealing with, whether it's 1 billion, 3 billion, whatever it is. So this is something that we're concerned with because that's got a shelf life. Once those funds are done, they're one-shot deals. And even though there are restrictions on what you can use it for, you can't use it to pay down debt service, you can't use it for pension payments maybe. Whatever you were using it for, now you have to account for in the new budget here. So those holes are going to have to be plugged, as you pointed out. It's actually very simple. You have limited sources of revenue, and when those sources of revenue need to be relied on, they have only one way to go, and that's up. And the revenues have been declining. I know the income and the revenue from investments has gone down also. So this is a huge double whammy for the state as far as the revenue issues. So when you increase spending on top of a drop in revenues, it's a recipe for disaster.
Right. Well, and we mentioned that the only place to turn is taxes,
Yep.
Whether it's corporations or individuals, and arguably we've made this point in our work previously, but I think you have too. And it's not the only stressor, right, on our residents and businesses. Mm-hmm. The much discussed recently New Jersey Transit issues in terms of not only a fare increase of 15%, but a continuing gap in their ability to fund their own operations. And that's, of course, coincident with a toll increase for the drivers. And so if you don't take public transportation, you get hit, right, on the Parkway and Turnpike with a toll increase that will, you can pretty much count on year in and year out. So, maybe talk a little bit about transportation, if you would, because I know you're very involved in that subject as well.
Yeah, and we're bracing ourselves, too, for a drop in ridership, which means lower revenues, which means a potential for fare increases on the trains. Now, what happens, too, when New Jersey Transit raises their rates, people will look for alternatives. Mm-hmm. There are private ferry companies, there are private bus companies, so will ridership decline even more as you raise rates like that? So this is a huge problem. They're going to be coming in before the budget committee, too. So,
really?
Yes. So one of the things that we would like to know is why did they move into a fancy new headquarters? I've been in the old headquarters, which seemed very suitable and worked well. There was no reason to make this sort of investment. So there are a lot of questions we have about the management, the fiscal management of New Jersey Transit and their outlook for the future. But this is very problematic, and it's a double-edged sword because the more you raise rates, the more ridership goes down, and you're chasing your tail then at that point, because you can never quite catch up.
Well, and also, there's also this notion that over the last several years, they've had the opportunity to adjust, right? We all drive by the empty parking lots at the train stations, certainly on Monday and Friday. Yeah. And yet we still have a Monday to Friday, full schedule during peak hours that don't even exist anymore. So do you see, I guess when they're coming in, will you be inquiring about, are they going to adjust to meet their customer needs as opposed to your point, what they've always done?
Exactly, and that's something that we've noticed. I could tell from my town, Middletown, which is a very, very large commuter town, 66,000 people. They used to have overflow lots, right, because they didn't have enough room for the permit holders that had permits. Now, the initial lots are half full at best. And this is a changing culture, too, where we have so many folks working from home, and they have to figure that into their future projections, too. So that's another question we're going to ask them about how are they going to project ridership and how are they going to attract riders, maybe adjust their schedules for weekends when there are events, maybe a little bit more than they do now. So this is something that they're going to really have to look at holistically and not just during rush hour 5 days a week and hope a miracle will happen where people will start to come and utilize the service. Right.
Well, that's the old expression, right? Hope is not a strategy.
Exactly.
I think we have big expectations of the new Commissioner for Transportation. Have you gotten a chance to meet him at all?
We haven't. I know there's been sort of an introductory email, that sort of thing, but I hope to speak to him certainly before the budget hearings and just to break the ice a little bit. And, when we do this, it's never adversarial. We really want to get to the bottom and get some answers and see if we can come up with a collective solution for whatever's facing them. So we always hope for the best with a change in leadership like that, and this is no different.
Right. Well, another subject that I know is very important to your constituents, everyone in the state, of course, but the general subject of energy, which is, of course, a global conversation and a national conversation, but it's also very specific, to New Jersey and to the constituents that you represent. So where do we stand now in terms of the energy plans and what's going on that?
Well, unfortunately, we haven't gotten a bottom line number of what the governor's energy master plan is going to cost. We haven't been able to get anywhere close to an idea of what he's proposing. I know my district is a shore district, so the proposed wind turbine projects were very impactful and a lot of concern there. Tourism is such a big part of our economy in Monmouth County, so that was a big concern. And the ultimate cost to the taxpayers was going to be astronomical from what we could project. So that was a big issue. It seemed to have subsided when some of the companies had pulled out. Now a few have come on board. So that issue is certainly has not gone away. We see, gas prices hovering around $3, especially Monmouth County is very automobile-centric as far as folks commuting to work and points around the state. So gas prices have a big impact. Home heating fuel, we had close to what we would call a normal winter. So energy costs have become more prominent in people's thought processes now with a colder than we've had in the
last
past.
year, certainly, yeah.
So those issues are still there. But I would say, alternative energies, we would all love alternative energies. We would all love it, but it's got to be practical too. So you can't just cut out one that is not only affordable and economical, but plentiful and reliable. We have the infrastructure for it. So there's got to be a combination of both, and that's something that we are big proponents of in Monmouth County, making sure that people have access to cheap, reliable energy.
Well, if we're able, we'd love to follow back up with you. We'll hear after the hearings on transit as well as the Energy Master Plan whenever we get to hear the next version of that. So really appreciate you being with us
Absolutely.
today.
Thank you for having me.